Calling the meeting of the Morris Township Planning Board on March 21st, 2022 to order. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the board in preparation of the 2022 annual meeting notice, which sets forth the date, time, and place of this meeting. And by properly posting such notice and forwarding the notice to those designated newspapers and persons requesting meeting notices. Moreover, in order to comply with the national and state declarations of the emergency related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the municipal land use law, the Open Public Meetings Act, and the emergency remote meeting protocols for local public bodies, this meeting is being held virtually on a web-based platform with remote public access. Could you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Can you call the roll, Sonia?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Nunn,
Here.
Mr. Jorfi,
Here.
Mr. Quillen,
Here.
Ms. Wilson. Ms. Wilson,
Here.
Ms. Van Order,
Here,
Mr. Flowers,
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes, she said.
She said yes.
No, I'm sorry. I'm calling Ms. Murphy. I'm sorry.
Ms. Murphy, actually, I think she let us know that she was going to be absent last time.
She did.
Okay.
I don't
So,
recall.
yes,
Okay. Mr. Warner,
I am here.
Mr. Phillips,
Here.
Mr. Slate,
Here.
Mr. Fishinger.
John Jar for Mr. Fishinger.
Oh, thank you, Mr. John. And did I call Mr. By?
Nope, I'm here.
Okay, and I,
Chairman by.
Chairman By,
Yeah.
and I, Sonia Santiago here.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Okay. The first thing on our agenda is resolution memorializing action from the February 7th meeting, 22. Do we,
Mr. Warner.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. That's the Teachers Insurance and Annuity Association of America resolution. You'll recall that was a preliminary and final site plan and bulk variance relief for proposed expansion of parking and related improvements on 299 Madison Avenue. There were some lot width, off-street parking in the front yard and parking stall size variances. The application was granted unanimously 8-0. And we have a draft resolution that hopefully accurately memorializes the board's decision on February 7th. And on page 16 is the roll call vote. The matrix was completed by Sonia, so we do know who can vote on the adoption of that resolution. Assuming there's no proposed revisions or comments.
does anyone have any comments or revisions, suggested revisions to the resolution? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve that resolution.
I'll make a motion.
None?
And I'll second.
I'm sorry,
Mr. Quinn.
we have board member Nunn as being absent. Is that correct?
Oh,
Apologies.
No problem, no problem. We'll have to have someone else make the motion.
So I'll move the resolution then.
okay. George Quillen will make the resolution. Now we need a second.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Van Order.
It's in order.
That works.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Quillen,
Yes.
Mr. Flowers,
Yes.
Ms. Van Order,
Yes,
Mr. By,
Yes.
Mr. Jorfi.
Yes.
So move.
Okay. Moving on to public hearings. We have the Anna management, which we brought up a while ago and was continued to tonight. So,
That's right. And Mr. Chairman, before we begin, I did have an opportunity to review the notice, found saying to be sufficient and timely served. So the board does have jurisdiction to hear the application this evening, and I do believe we have counsel for the applicant, Mr. Brady, here.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This is David Brady of the firm of Brady and Corial on behalf of the applicant. Thank you, Mr. Warner. I was going to put that on my list of first things to do to ask about notice. If, with the chair's permission, I could give a short overview of what the case is about.
Mr. Chairman, before we get into that, I need to let the board know that I am recusing from this application.
Thank you, Councilman Wilson. My apologies. Deputy Mayor Wilson, my apologies for forgetting. But we do still have 6 board members, so we have more than a sufficient quorum to hear the case, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, right. Okay, good. Okay. Then can we proceed? Mr. Brady?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, we represent Anna Management. The case regards 222 Madison Avenue, which is block 8602, lots 4, 5, and 6. Anna is the contract purchaser of the property. The property is situated at the corner of Madison Avenue and Langdon Lane. It's technically 3 tax lots, but it was developed in the past as an integrated site for a bank. It was a commerce bank followed by being a TD bank. It hasn't been a bank now for several years because brick and mortar banks are slowly but surely disappearing, and this is one of those casualties. The property is about 1 acre, just short of that. The property has a drive-through facility covered by a canopy on the, I think it's on the north side of the property. It has 28 parking spaces. It has ingress and egress via both Madison Avenue and Langdon Lane. The property is in the B11 business zone. The B11 business zone permits all retail, commercial, business, and professional establishments with certain exceptions. The applicant is the largest owner-operator of Dunkin' Donut franchises in New Jersey, has about 90 locations in New Jersey and over 100 locations when you count the locations that are in neighboring states. The application is to convert the existing building into use as a Dunkin' Donuts store. Because it is a large building, larger than your typical Dunkin' Donuts, not only will it serve and coffee and donuts, muffins and things of that nature that I'm sure we all know are available at Dunkin' Donuts, but there'll also be interior seating, 22 seats, I believe it is, and an area that provides to-go prepackaged food such as beverages, chips, snacks, and things of that nature. As I said, the building has a canopy with 3 drive-through lanes associated with the former bank. We do not propose to use those drive-through lanes as drive-throughs. In fact, we are going to remove the drive-through tubes and remove the drive-through window on the side of the building. We are not going to tear down the canopy though, and we propose to make use of the canopy by having that be the location where persons who want to have curbside pickup can do so out of the elements. So someone could call in with the Dunkin' has an app for your phone. Someone can call in an order, drive around the back of the building, wait under the overhang, and then someone will come inside to deliver the food. At the request of one of the board professionals, when this went through a TCC, we also put 2 curbside pickup locations in parking spots in the front of the building, but that are not under the canopy. I indicated that the B11 zone provides for a broad set of commercial and retail uses. There are some exceptions. 2 notable exceptions are that a drive-through use is not permitted, nor a drive-in restaurant use. However, this application is neither of those. A drive-in restaurant is a restaurant where a portion of the consumption of the items that are sold is designed to take place outside the building, but on the building lot. That is not the intention here. We have no outside tables. As I say, we have over 20 inside tables. So we are not a drive-in restaurant, nor are we a drive-through restaurant because we are removing the drive-through from the operation. Beyond that, we are putting in some new storefront, which complies with the requirements of the township. We are replacing the message on the existing freestanding sign, and we're putting some signage on the building, all of which complies with the township requirements. And we are in compliance with all the township zoning requirements in terms of bulk requirements, setbacks, lot size, and things of that nature. So not only are we not proposing any variances, this is not a situation where there are existing variances on the site that are not going to be touched. We have 3 witnesses tonight. We have Raghav Patel, who's with Anna Management. We have Paul Ferrero, and he is our professional engineer. We have Cynthia Falls, who is our architect. We do not intend to finish tonight because we've been exchanging information with the township traffic consultant, and he has requested some additional information to go into our traffic report. We're going to get that information, and we will intend to carry this meeting to another meeting where we can deal with the traffic issues. And with that being said, unless there's any questions, I'm ready to call the first witness.
I missed the witnesses. Who are
Yes,
the 3 witnesses?
the witnesses are Raghav Patel, Paul Ferrero, he's our civil engineer, and
Okay.
Cynthia Falls, she's our architect.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes. Mr. Quillen.
So, Mr. Brady, I'd like to know, and I guess our council as well, why, if there are no variances required, why this is coming before the planning board? Is this a site plan matter or something else?
It's a site plan matter.
And I will confirm that whether or not, it's my understanding, Board Attorney Steve Warner, it's my understanding there are no variances, at least for the time being, and we'll see if that stays the same. But even assuming it stays that way, a site plan, a fully conforming site plan requires planning board approval.
There was a site plan for the prior bank, and that needs to be amended for this new business use.
Correct. And I don't know if Jim Slate or Paul Phillips wishes to add anything to that or concur, but yes.
Thank you.
I have nothing to add to that.
I would concur.
Thank you.
Okay, with 3 witnesses, do we?
I can swear them in, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
when-
yes.
If you would like
swear
to
all
do
3
so.
in, if they're.
Sure, and I'll swear in our board professionals, Mr. Slate, Mr. Phillips, and I believe we have Mr. Jar, even though we may not be hearing from him today, he is our traffic engineer. I'll ask if he'll raise his right hand as well. And if I could see him and Paul, Jim, I could see you. Yeah.
I need my right hand in order to.
Okay, we'll wait a minute. Okay, there we go. Everybody, do all of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I believe we're ready to proceed when you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you could call your first witness, Mr. Brady. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then I would call Raghav Patel.
If we could just have him, Mr. Patel's name spelled and address, business address is fine for the record.
Sure. Mr. Patel, could you spell your name, both first and last, and give your address for the record? And a business address is sufficient, I believe, Mr. Warner.
Okay. First name Raghav, spelled Raghav, and my last name is Patel, Patel. My address is 61 Morris Street, Morristown, New Jersey, 07960.
Okay, Mr. Patel, if you could you describe your relationship with Anna Management?
I'm one of the principal owners and senior director of operations.
And what is Anna Management exactly?
Anna Management is the parent company of Dunkin' franchise that own and operate approximately 100 stores in New Jersey and New York.
Okay, and how long has Anna been operating in New Jersey?
Since 1989. Actually, our first store was in Morristown back in 1989.
And you still have that store?
That's correct. It's the store right under the Staples.
I was going to ask you if you're familiar with the operations, but since you're in charge of operations, director of operations, that goes without saying, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, you can say I'm familiar.
Now let's turn our attention to the site that's before the board tonight, the 222 Madison Avenue site. What relationship does Anna have to that site at this time? It's not the owner, correct?
We are the contract purchaser.
Okay, so you're a purchaser, you're not a tenant.
Correct.
And what is there now? Just describe it briefly, if you would.
It's a vacant bank building. Used to be TD Bank.
And do you know how long it's been vacant for?
I believe at least 5 years.
Now, you've heard me indicate to the board that it is not the intention of Anna to use the drive-through lanes that are under the canopy at the bank. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That canopy will remain, however, correct?
That's also correct.
And what use will Anna make of the fact that there is a canopy there?
We would reserve those spots for curbside pickup.
Now, how does curbside pickup work for Dunkin'?
So it requires an individual to download the Dunkin' Donuts app on their phone. They can place their order through their phone, notify the store that they've arrived, and once the order is ready, an employee will come outside and deliver the food and beverages.
And you're familiar with the operations of Dunkin'. So how many curbside pickups like this would you expect to occur daily at this location?
You could say about a dozen or so.
Okay. Do you propose any outside tables at this location?
No, we do not.
Now, inside, let's discuss about what goes on inside. Do you make the donuts here?
No, we do not.
Where are they made and how are they delivered?
They're made at a central kitchen. They're delivered every night. Takes about 5 minutes for the delivery truck to come and just drop it off right before opening. And,
what kind of truck delivers it?
It's a small truck.
Commonly known as a box truck?
Right, a box truck. Yeah, I lost the word. Thank you.
That's okay. Do you make anything else there, though? Eggs or bacon or muffins or things of that nature?
So we bake muffins, croissants, and bagels on premises. We do have sandwiches. It's predominantly reheating. We use, convection ovens that have like a microwave element to it.
So it's not like a cooking sort of facility in the sense of a griddle and things of that nature.
That's correct.
What hours do you expect to be open?
We expect to be open from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m.
Is that 7 days a week?
That's 7 days a week. Sorry. Yeah.
And based on your experience with these various franchises, what are the peak hours of operation when you have the most customers?
Sure. Between the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 a.m.
And during those hours, how many employees do you expect will be on the site?
During peak hours, we should have no more than 6 employees.
And we're not having any outside seats, we said, or we're having inside seats here.
We will, yes.
And I know that the architect will go through the floor plan a little, but just describe a little bit for the board how this is going to work in terms of the service of customers for Dunkin' Donuts and this number of seats that you anticipate having.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Could you?
Okay, that's fine. As you come in the building, you're going to have an area to the left that is where the donuts or coffee are served, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you're going to also have 22 seats or approximately that many in that area?
That's also correct, yes.
Okay. On the right-hand side, though, there's going to be a section that contains prepackaged to-go goods, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And the reason for that is because of the size of this building?
This building is much larger than a typical Dunkin' Donuts, so we would like to utilize the space effectively or properly.
So in other Dunkin' Donuts, you have to-go items available, correct?
We do, yes.
And so this is of the same nature, but perhaps just a little larger?
Correct. Better use of the
And
space.
you're not leasing out that section of the building to some other operator, correct?
We are not. We will be operating the entire facilities business, yeah.
So Anna Management's going to operate both the portion that is busy with serving coffee and donuts and prepared items, and also with handling the prepackaged items such as drinks and things of that nature.
That's correct, yes.
We talked about delivery of donuts. Will other deliveries be necessary?
Yes, roughly once a week, we have our what do you call it? The inventory that we have at the store is shipped once a week by a truck.
Other than donuts. Other
Other
than
than
donuts.
Yeah,
Okay.
our typical goods. Yeah, cups, paper goods, bagels, that kind of stuff. Coffee beans.
How long does that typically take for the truck to unload?
1 hour on average.
And will there be other vendors that will have to deliver to the store?
Not for the Dunkin' Donuts, but for the expanded items, such as the to-go goods, such as the chips and the other beverages, we may have some vendors.
Okay. And the Dunkin' Donut delivery, does that take place in a box truck or a tractor trailer, or what does it take place in?
It's typically a tractor trailer.
Okay. And with regard to the other vendors, since you have these at your other stores, maybe not quite as many though, in terms of choice of product, do they typically take place in a step van or a box truck, or do you know?
It really depends on the vendor. So it's hard to say now, but it varies.
Okay. I don't have any further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I am going to switch things up a little bit tonight then, and ask the board professionals to, if they have any questions for the witness before the board members. So if, any of our board professionals have any questions for this witness?
No questions.
I have a few questions, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Go ahead.
What is the time of the donut delivery in the evening?
I would say early morning.
So is that during the operating hours that start at 5 a.m. or before?
It's typically after the store is closed.
So it's between 10 PM and 5 AM?
Correct.
Okay, and is there anyone at the store at that time, or they just left, or how does that work?
No, we have a system where we use keys and alarm codes for them to deliver the donuts overnight.
Okay. And the delivery for the once a week for the inventory, when does that take place?
Typically takes place during store operating hours.
Okay. And I just want to make sure I understood correctly your testimony regarding the number of vehicles per day that utilize the curbside pickup. Can you just go through that again?
Sure, it's our projection based on projected volume of the store and what we see in like stores. So
And
we're
I'm sorry, what was the estimate per day?
12, about a dozen.
That's it.
Correct.
Okay. And are there any of your other stores where you accommodate the curbside pickup under a canopy, or is it typically in like a designated parking space?
It's typically in a designated parking space. I'm trying to think if we have any stores with a canopy. No, just parking space.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is that it for the board? Mr. Warner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, the applicant is a contract purchaser at the site, correct?
Yes.
And you said you're a principal, so you're one of the members of the LLC entity, Anna Management LLC?
Yes, it's a family-owned company.
Right, but it's a limited liability company, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And the limited liability company has members, correct?
Correct.
And you're one of the members?
My father and his partner are members of Anna Management, and I'll be a member of the store.
A member of a different LLC that's going to operate this store?
It's a family-owned business, so it's owned by my father, my uncle, and their children.
I'm just trying to understand candidly. I didn't anticipate the answer. It wasn't a trick question. You said you were a principal. Maybe your attorney knows. How are you a principal of Anna Management LLC if you're not a member of Anna Management LLC?
No, I am. It's just I thought no, that's fine. I got confused. Sorry.
Okay, now that you're not confused, are you a member of Anna Management LLC?
Yes.
Okay. You testified there will be no drive-through. Are you stipulated as a condition of approval, should there be an approval, that there will be no drive-through?
Yeah, we are okay with an approval without a drive-through.
Okay. Are you stipulating, you said there were going to be no menu boards, correct?
Correct. No menu boards.
Are you stipulating as a condition of approval, should there be an approval, that there will be no menu boards?
We will so stipulate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And will you stipulate no outdoor speakers in the site as well?
We will
We'll stipulate to that too also.
Okay, thank you. And you said no outside tables, correct?
That's correct.
Would you stipulate as condition of approval, should there be an approval, to no outside tables?
We will stipulate.
Yes.
Okay, and bear with me. You said you are the packaged to-go items area of the store, since the building is bigger than the usual Dunkin' Donuts. You said you're not leasing that out to any other entity, that's going to be owned and operated by Anna Management, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, will you stipulate as a condition of approval, should there be an approval, that that area would contain to-go packaged items only and not provided, not operated by any third-party entity, but operated by the same entity that operates the Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes.
Will,
Okay, thank you. You said, you told us about the box trucks delivering the donuts. You said there were deliveries once a week for inventory, et cetera. It takes 1 hour, but you didn't tell us, I think you said by way of a tractor trailer. What is the size of that tractor trailer?
It's like a typical like 18-wheeler truck.
You wouldn't know it's a 75-footer or a 55-footer, you wouldn't know.
No, off the top of my head.
Okay.
Mr. Warner, since I indicated we're not going to finish tonight, I'll make that a note to find out before our next meeting.
Thank you. The is the applicant proposing, or if the applicant's not proposing, would the applicant stipulate as a condition of approval, should there be an approval, that the three lots would be merged?
Yes, that's in fact a note on the engineering plans.
Save that. I have nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Warner.
We also have Mr. Fishinger. I don't know if he had questions he is a board professional.
Right.
This application, I don't know if he had questions for this particular witness, but.
No, actually, you guys asked the questions I was going to ask. You stole my thunder.
Okay, and I said, Mr. Fishinger, I apologize, Mr. Jar.
It's all,
Yeah,
so yeah, you guys eloquently hit every item I needed to have for this witness. Thank you very much.
Okay, if there are no more questions from the board professionals, do we have any questions from the planning board members? I see Mr. Quillen. Mr. Quillen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions. Mr. Patel, you said you operate or own the a Dunkin' Donuts in Morristown, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you said it's near the Staples. I wasn't quite sure. That there's a Dunkin' Donuts on a corner. What is that, Morris Avenue? That's not near a Staples. Are there more than one? Is there more than one Dunkin' Donuts in Morristown?
That's correct. There's one on Lafayette Ave under the Staples in the shopping center. And then there's one on Morris Street, 61 Morris Street, actually, which is our headquarters for our entire operations. So the Dunkin' Donuts at the bottom, and then our main office is above that.
You operate both of those.
Correct.
And you operate the Dunkin' Donuts in Madison on Main Street or on Madison Avenue in Madison?
Yeah, we operate the store in Madison as well, yes.
And you operate the store in Chatham as well? That's also on what's called Main Street in Chatham?
Yeah, we operate the store in Chatham as well, yes.
Have you applied for permission to open a Dunkin' Donuts operation in Morris Township before?
No. Not that I know of.
I'm aware, I have a recollection that there was an application that came to the Board of Adjustment in Morris Township quite a few years ago. I want to say 10 to 12 years ago, to have a Dunkin' Donuts part of a gas station, part of the Exxon station on the other side of the road from the place that you're proposing to put in your Dunkin' Donuts. And I believe the Board of Adjustment denied that application. I think there was a significant amount of resident unhappiness about the application, but I don't know the details, and I don't know if any variances were requested as part of that application. Do you have any knowledge of that?
No, I came into the business 10 years ago. So if anything prior to that, I don't have direct knowledge. So it could have been a different franchisee. It could have been us. I'm not entirely sure.
All I had. Thank you.
Okay. What else have we got here?
Tanya?
Mayor,
Yeah, well, okay, but I think Tanya was first. Is Van Order, you have questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This could be possibly to our board professionals and really to educate me. I hear Mr. Warner ask for a stipulation that there be no outside seating. So I was wondering, is that due to the zoning restrictions for the B11 business zone? I personally like outdoor seating, so I just was curious about that.
Mr. Chairman, I can answer, and I'll be very candid. It was a zealous council. When the representation was made, I didn't know if it was being offered as a stipulation or not. As it was a stipulation, the board does not have to take that stipulation. It just gives the board the option, since the applicant offered it as a stipulation. If there's an approval, the board can say, okay, thank you for that stipulation, or thank you for that stipulation, but no, thank you. We'd like you to have open, outdoor dining or tables available to you. So I was not specifically addressing it from the perspective of zoning. That said, perhaps our planner, Mr. Phillips, might want to weigh in as to the extent, if at all, that would implicate our permitted uses in our zoning in that zone.
So,
With the chair's
Ms. Van
permission.
Order, I don't believe there's any prohibition on outdoor seating in the B11 zone. It's not, as you know, proposed as part of this application, but I don't believe, at least, and I'll double check that during the course of these proceedings, but I don't believe, based on my recollection, there is a prohibition. And Jim, you may weigh in on that if you feel I'm not correct.
But, Mr. Phillips,
I'm not aware
we
of
had
any prohibition.
stipulated that because my reading of what a drive-in restaurant is, the definition is, I believe I have it quoted right, a building where food and beverages are sold in a form ready for consumption and where a portion of the consumption of the same takes place or is designed to take place outside the confines of the building, but on the building lot. So if we were proposing outdoor seating, it would seem to me we would fall directly under that definition, thereby triggering a variance, which we are not seeking to do, obviously. And that is the reason why we had testified that way and we were ready to stipulate to that.
So I will double check, Mr. Brady, the definition. I think what you're reading from is the definition of a drive-in restaurant as opposed
Correct.
to a drive-through restaurant.
Correct.
And drive-in restaurants are indeed prohibited. And you may be accurate because the drive-in restaurant, I think, does not require that the service be to the vehicle per se, per the township's definition, which is sort of the more typical definition, is like the typical drive-in is like a car hop type service. But you may be correct. I'll just double check the literal reading of the drive-in restaurant indicates that the consumption should not take place outside the confines of the building. So if that's kind of what you're addressing, you may be correct, but I'll take another look at the definition and I can weigh in, at a later time on that.
Okay. Well, if Mr. Phillips were to find that having outside seating is not prohibited in the zone, then obviously the applicant does not propose any outside seating at this time, but on the theory that some latitude would be good, we would obviously appreciate not having that stipulation. But based on my reading, and if Mr. Phillips agrees with me, we do not have a problem with stipulating.
I guess that answers my question in as far as it can be answered at this time. I wouldn't require, if it's not required, that stipulation, and would be hopeful for a future opportunity to sit in what appears to be a nice little grassy area. And for me, visually, I would prefer there to be some nice outside space as opposed to some covered space for 12 people, per day that are too lazy to get out. I shouldn't say that, who like the convenience of having service to their car. So, I mean, it's neither here nor there. You're not proposing it, but if it's not a required stipulation, I wouldn't ask for it. Thank you.
Just to note, Ms. Van Orden, that the convenience is not only convenience for people who may not feel like walking a couple steps, but when parents have children or someone is handicapped, things of that nature, the covered during inclement weather pickup is a handy thing.
That's a very good point. I appreciate you adding that in, Mr. Brady. Thank you.
Sure.
You done, Ms. Van Order? Is that it?
I am. Thank you. I will take my hand down.
Okay.
Did I take it down, or did you already do it? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Okay, then Mayor Jyoti, you have some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Patel, for joining us tonight. I had a few questions following up on what we've just been talking about. Will the curbside hours be consistent with your normal store hours?
Yes, they will be.
Okay. And I guess I'm trying to understand where, so you said they're going to be under the canopy, but also in other parking spots. How many actual curbside pickup areas would be under the canopy?
We'll go through that with Mr. Ferrero. You can still outline it on the plan.
Appreciate it. How long does a typical curbside customer stay in their car on the property?
So we typically have a standard that we like to meet where we get a guest in and out within 2 minutes. That's kind of like the standard of time that we hold ourselves to.
Okay.
It could be quicker if they, order it right before they leave and then, check in when they arrive. So,
would you say most of those customers, once they get their coffee or donuts or food, they leave right away, or do they stay and hang around and start eating?
I would say a vast majority of people leave. Dunkin' Donuts is, I would say, more of a to-go business in that sense.
Okay. And then my other question, more pertaining to the building itself, do you have any other, since I think you said you operate, I think 100 or so, how many buildings have you retrofitted before, and have you retrofitted a former bank before?
We've retrofitted many buildings. It's hard to give you an exact number, but it's a large amount. We have done a few banks in the past. So yeah, it's not something that, it's something that we're used to.
Yeah. And for those banks, did you keep drive-through, or did you come up with a similar solution?
We kept a drive-through in one. Another bank had no drive-through. I recall.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, with that, any more questions from the board panelists? There are no more questions, and we'll open it up for public comment. I would just comment again for the public that these are questions for this witness. There will be time for comments, more general comments later at the end of the entire presentation. But for right now, these are questions related to this witness only. So do we have anybody here?
I see Patricia Collins has raised her hand.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, could you please state your full name and address, please?
Yes, Patricia Collins, 4 Green Knolls Road, Morris Township. And my question is, the gentleman said that they were anticipating like a dozen per day of drive-through, which sounds very low. Could he please tell me how many customers inside coming in and out, parking their car, going in, going out? Can you tell us what you anticipate? That's a very large space. Have you done studies? That would be for Mr. Patel.
Right. I believe, and Mr. Brady can correct me, I believe we have a traffic study done. Or
Yeah, we do have a traffic study, and that'll be the subject of continuation of this. And they do have a prediction of trip generation that will be related to this site.
Right. Well, does anybody know well, I know it will be incorporated into the traffic study, but does anybody have that figure, like what you're anticipating for your business? How many people a day? Because I go to the Dunkin' Donuts in Madison, and there's a lot of people every day.
I would, you have questions over the numbers. He's referenced the traffic study, which is, the traffic study as is available on the township website. So
Mr. Slate,
it is there. Yeah, you can wade through and find it, but it will be testified to in a later meeting, and that question would be better answered there on the trip generation. So.
And Ms. Collins, if you were on earlier, you would have heard me say that the township or the board's engineer, traffic engineer, wanted some additional information incorporated into the study. So there will be a supplemental study filed. So if you go looking for it, make sure you look again to find the supplemental.
Right. Well, I thank you so much, but getting to that. So in other words, I have to go to the traffic studies to see how many people they anticipate per day.
Yes.
I do. Okay. Thank you. I have another question, please. Following up, and I think this might be a question for the township too, because following up on Mr. Quillen's question, I found that curious myself, because I remember the gas station across the street wanted like a mini mart. And it sounds like this Dunkin' Donuts will have a mini mart, and he was refused. So what changed? Did the zoning change, or could someone explain that to me, please?
Mr. Chair, if I can, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The Board Attorney, Steve Warner, Ms. Collins. I'm not familiar, frankly, with that Board of Adjustment application, but this is a different application. This is an application not for a convenience store associated or a gas station or anything else apparently associated with the Dunkin' Donuts, but just simply a Dunkin' Donuts with an expanded, as I understand it, to-go package area to take advantage of the additional building space. Every application is different. This is not an application with variances before the zoning board. This is an application apparently with no variances, just a site plan before the planning board. So it's just different. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Next I see is a Lee Jean Crawford.
Okay, Ms. Crawford, please say your full name and address, please.
Yes, hi, this is Lee and Jean Crawford.
I'm
We're
sorry.
at 5 Langdon Lane.
I'm sorry, 5 what?
5 Langdon Lane,
Langdon. Okay, thank you.
2 doors down.
Yep, thank you.
So if my question is not appropriate for this witness, we can move it somewhere else, I guess. But my first question is more related to sanitation. One being how often and what type of garbage trucks would be coming in and out, and also any information you give us about controlling any kind of rat population around dumpsters would be appreciated.
Sure. So we hire a pest control company that services our locations once a month. They set traps in various areas, especially in the hotspots, like the dumpster area for one. As for garbage pickup, it's typically 2 garbage pickups per week and 1 for cardboard.
And then is there any kind of enclosures for the dumpsters are located? Are they going to be out in the open and far side of the park lot kind of thing?
That's something that Mr. Ferrero can address during his engineering testimony.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thanks.
I guess we have.
Next up I see is Lee Goldberg.
Mr. Goldberg, name and address. Full name and address. You're muted right now.
Hi, good evening. Lee Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road. Am I audible?
Yes, yep, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I just procedurally, I was about 15 minutes late to the meeting, but I think I've been able to surmise that there will be a traffic testimony in the future, and that so this will actually be carried to another meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and the applicant, or is it the applicant who was Mr. Patel, who was giving testimony as I joined the call? So questions that are being taken at this time are of just general nature for the application. Is that correct?
He testified as to how it will be used. So it's the use and of the store and the management of the store.
Okay, thank you. So I think I heard that the testimony was that it's anticipated roughly a dozen or so patrons would be using the curbside pickup over the course of the day. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
And so as I look at the site plan for the application, I mean, there seems to be a lot of sort of circulation going on the tract. And a lot of it seems to deal with the curbside pickup, allowing for curbside pickup. But so is there the cost benefit analysis, I guess, in terms of the number of transactions you're expecting to what you're asking to be implemented, the sort of the juice is worth the squeeze, I guess, to have these accommodations made for it, to allow for it. Is that accurate from a business perspective? For 12 a day?
So it's an existing canopy, and our plan is to reuse it for the curbside pickup. So yeah, when we did our analysis, it made sense for us.
Okay. And you would also reference that you had experienced converting some other banks into Dunkin' Donuts. One of, I think you said, is doing customer pickup, not a drive-through. And so where is that one located?
So there's one in, I'm trying to recall. We have about 90 stores. I think it was in Manville. And then there's.
I'm sorry, did you say Manville?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact. And then I think there's one that was converted in Asbury Park, but I don't remember the exact towns.
Oh, and those would be operations that are under your management or that you're just aware of?
They're under our management of 90 stores, so it's hard to remember exactly which one was for which.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good.
Over the course of the last 10 years, yeah.
All right. And then as sort of the one question I have in terms of it, I don't know if this is appropriate at this time in the proceedings. I'm just curious, with this sort of density that's going on the site with allowing for parking and circulation, what is the sort of snow management approach for, mountains of snow or needing to move a lot of snow around on the site and, consuming up spaces potentially for a significant amount of time, depending on how big a storm and how cold it is? What is the sort of snow remediation plan, if that's an appropriate question at this point?
So for any of our stores, we use, snow removal vendors that we contract with to remove our snow. And, that's their job. That's what they're good at. And we defer to them to, create the proper snow management system.
And can that sometimes include in also having it sort of carted off-site as well versus just plowing it into a corner somewhere and, building a mound that obstructs perhaps circulation or driving or things along those lines? I mean, do you actually remove snow from some of your operations?
It really depends on, it really just depends on access. There's a multitude of factors. Sometimes the vendors will recommend it. We have a store at Staten Island with a parking lot that would be obstructed if we didn't, cart off the snow, and so we do it. In other locations, we don't. So it really just depends on their recommendation, and then we can make a decision on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. And then also for employees, that may have the responsibilities of going out to provide the customer, bring the, the consumables to the car, so to speak. Is there any additional safety precautions that need to be taken? Do they need to come out in an orange vest, and implementations you've done, so to speak? Anything to increase their, to allow for their safety and conducting their duties that you've seen addressed or implemented, other than just go run out to the car and bring it to them, so to speak? Any concerns there that as an employer or a manager of the operation that you'd be concerned with?
For the stores that we've been doing curbside, we haven't really seen a need for any type of orange vest or anything. The customer will typically write the make and model of their car in the Dunkin' Donuts app, so the employee can easily identify the vehicle, and then they'll bring the food out directly to them. But nothing beyond that.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do have one question, if I'm allowed to, or if not, I can wait till a more appropriate time for the board professionals on this. Would it be appropriate to ask that now, or should I defer that?
Well, related to this kind of use of the store?
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my question is, I'm not, if our board professionals, I'm curious as of our master plan, if anyone's aware, if it speaks to sort of a fast food establishment or the type of establishment we're discussing here for Dunkin' Donuts. Obviously, this is in a commercial area, but it is zoned by residential, and, aside from, additional traffic and maybe this type of establishment, I know it was a concern when the other one was proposed across the street, sort of cheapening the neighborhood, so to speak. Just wondering if the master plan speaks to this at all.
Steve Warner, board attorney, I suspect the answer from board professionals would come from Mr. Phillips, our planner. But before he does, Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask, I'm curious to ask Mr. Brady, was it your intention to have a professional planner testify in connection with this application, notwithstanding that you believe it to be a variance-free application?
No, since it is a variance-free application, our perspective is that it's site issues really and design criteria that are really at stake, not planning criteria. As I read into the record, this B11 zone allows all retail, commercial, business, and professional service establishments. And then it goes on to cite some that it doesn't allow, like auto stations, drive-in restaurants, drive-through restaurants, mechanical automobile washing establishments. So I think clearly it's permitted in this zone, but we did not see a planning issue.
Okay, and now, thank you, Mr. Brady. With Mr. Chairman, notwithstanding same, a member of the public has asked the question, so the question is out there, and Mr. Phillips is here. I can, certainly Mr. Phillips should be able to answer the question to the extent he feels it's appropriate.
So, Mr. Goldberg, I don't think there's anything in the master plan documentation, including the most recent reexamination, that deals with your specific inquiry related to, I think, as you characterize, fast food restaurants. Although I will tell you that there is a recommendation in the master plan to basically look at the B11 zoning generally and of course the portions of the Madison Avenue corridor are zone B11. And the recommendation was to look at the permitted uses that exist today and determine whether any changes were needed to either respond to the market or to address issues with surrounding residential areas or neighborhoods, as you indicate. The only other thing that I'll add is within the last 2 years, there was a change to the ordinance, which specifically put in a provision which prohibited drive-through restaurants. And there was, as part of that ordinance amendment, there was a definition included of what was a drive-through restaurant. And the drive-through restaurant definition indicates that that is where customers or patrons are served via a drive-through window in the building. And when that amendment went into effect, it was not intended to preclude curbside pickup service, which is what the applicant is proposing here. And sort of while I have the floor, Mr. Chairman, I did have the opportunity to take a look at that drive-in restaurant definition in the ordinance that Mr. Brady cited. And I will say, after reading it several times, I think a literal reading of that definition would prohibit sort of outdoor seating. I'm not sure that was the intent. And the drive-in restaurant definition is before my time with the township, but I think I would agree with Mr. Brady that a literal reading would prohibit that.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips, and thank you to this board for allowing me to ask these questions. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brady, can we move on to your next witness then?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Phillips again. Can I
Yes.
just have one follow-up of Mr. Patel?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Thank you. And I want to be clear on this. So you mentioned, Mr. Patel, that there were, I think, one or two examples of existing stores that you operate where there was a retrofit of a bank with a drive-through. And I just want to be clear that on either or both of those stores, was the drive-through that was part of the bank kept? Meaning, does the Dunkin' Donuts at those locations provide drive-through service? Or was the area under the canopy converted to curbside pickup, such as what you're proposing here?
So for us, curbside pickup is a rather new phenomenon. So it's something that we introduced during the pandemic as kind of a way for people to socially distance. So when we first retrofitted those stores, we did not have curbside pickup. And then canopies themselves, they weren't existing. So it's not something that, we built or kept.
So were those drive-throughs at the banks converted to Dunkin' Donut drive-throughs?
The one store that had a drive-through, we kept the drive-through or keeping the drive-through. Yeah.
Okay. So there are no examples that you can think of where an area under the canopy was converted for the curbside pickup, correct?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me.
And
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next.
Mr. Slate has another question.
Sorry, Mr. Brady, just one more follow-up, and I think this may be addressed by Mr. Ferrero, but just to follow up in regard to one of the issues raised by one of the neighbors. I don't recall, and I just took another look at the plans, there being a dumpster area or a recycling trash enclosure on the plans. So I thought it was that the trash would be kept in a separate area and then picked up because there was not a dumpster. So let's get some clarification on that as we get additional testimony.
Mr. Patel, is there a plan with regard to the trash and whether it will be kept in the building until such time that it's taken out?
No, we typically remove trash and keep it in a designated area.
Okay. Well, then, Mr. Slate, you're correct. I don't see that there's a trash area on the plan, but perhaps when Mr. Ferrero's up, he can discuss about where one could be added.
Okay. That was it. Okay. So, I guess we're ready for Mr. Ferrero then.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ferrero, if you could, please, excuse me, fill the board in on your educational and professional background.
Just
business address first.
Yes, Ferrero.
Sure. My name is Paul Ferrero, and that's spelled Ferriero from Ferrero Engineering. Address is 180 Main Street, Chester, New Jersey. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey and 9 other states, and my license is currently valid in all those states. My educational background includes a Bachelor of Science degree from the United States Military Academy, master's degree from the University of Pittsburgh. I have been licensed as an engineer since 1988 and provided testimony to hundreds of boards across the state, including the Morris Township Planning Board and the Board of Adjustment. I serve as a consulting engineer for about 18 municipalities across the state of New Jersey. I've been accepted as an expert in front of many planning boards and boards of adjustment, as well as in Superior Court.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that Mr. Farrow be accepted as an expert in the field of civil engineering.
I will accept him. Please go ahead.
First of all, Mr. Farrow, would you tell the board what you did in terms of getting ready to prepare the plans that are here, such as viewing the site, et cetera?
Sure. And if I could, is it possible for me to share a screen with an exhibit?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Let me know when the screen is up and everybody can see it.
We can see it now.
Okay, what you see here is a aerial photograph of the property in question, and it's lots 4, 5, and 6 in block 8602 on the corner of Langdon Lane and Madison Avenue in Morris Township. As has been discussed previously, it's improved with a building that was formerly a bank, and there's also a number of parking stalls on the property. I show you this area.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ferrer, I apologize for interrupting, but I think we should mark this as Exhibit A1 for the record, okay?
Sure, it's Exhibit A1. It's entitled Photo Overlay, and it has a date of preparation of February, I think it's, bear with me, February 4th, 2022 is when we prepared this exhibit. And I will, because I've been to enough of these meetings and I've gotten seasick with cursors sliding all over the screens, I will do my best. But if somebody sees too much action going on, please wave your arms and I will slow it down. This area is improved with the bank, and you can see there were 3 drive-through lanes on this property when it's functioning as a bank. There are a number of parking spaces around the perimeter of the site. It's also improved with existing site lighting. There are entrances and exits to both Madison Avenue and Langdon Lane. Under the proposal, the improvements are actually going to be relatively minor. And what I'd like to do is move from here to the site plans of the drawing that you can see in this location. This is the cover sheet. And the only thing I want to point out on this cover sheet is in the center. And that shows the property in question with Langdon Lane and Madison Avenue here. One thing I would like to point out, and this relates to some of the discussion about a potential prior application for a Dunkin' at a gas station across the street, and that went to the Board of Adjustment. As was discussed with the permitted uses in the B11 zone, I don't believe a gas station is a permitted use. So therefore, the construction or the addition of any kind of a convenience store, Quick Mart, Dunkin' Donuts to that facility would be an expansion of a non-conforming use, which would require an application to the Board of Adjustment. Completely different scenario than we have here. We are going with a use that is permitted in the B11 zone.
Mr. Ferrer, just for the record, is that the last revised version, October 27, 2021 of the site plan?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
So that's the same set that the board has in its possession. It's not marked up or changed in any way.
That's correct. Okay. What I'd like to do next is the next sheet in the set is called a demolition and existing conditions plan. There really, frankly, is not a lot to see on this plan because there is not a whole lot of demolition. Most of the site is staying exactly as it is now. You can see the parking spaces that exist on the property. For the record, 22 parking spaces are required for the proposed use, and there are 28. I know there was a question earlier about how the master plan may treat restaurants like this that may be considered fast food restaurants. And I know there was some testimony that this zone is being looked at, but for our purposes, as we make this application, it's the zoning ordinance that controls and not necessarily the master plan. Once master plan elements get enacted as ordinances, that's when they would actually apply to the site. This particular case, we're just dealing with the B11 zone as it exists today. Finally, I'd like to go to the third sheet, which is where I show everything that's happening on the drawing. This is sheet 3 of 3 of the site plan set. I'm going to blow it up for a couple of reasons. The first is just a recap of the parking requirements. And I misspoke. There are 9 parking spaces required for the number of the seats in the restaurant, and there are 28 on the site. So there are definitely more parking stalls than we need on the site, although granted that 9 is probably a small number. It'll probably be discussed more in the traffic report, but the 28 is still more parking than we would ever reasonably need on the site for this use. Dunkin' Donuts tend to have a very quick turnover on their parking stalls, so we don't have problems like that. The zone table in the lower left-hand corner, as Mr. Brady pointed out, everything is relative to the zone standards is compliant with the ordinance standards, and no non-conforming conditions exist, and no variances are being proposed. I will zoom in some more so we can see what's going on and talk about some of the items that we've discussed. First, we have the curbside pickup over here on the western side of the building. There are multiple slots there where vehicles can wait, and the employees can come out of the building and deliver the goods to the pickup area. Based on comments from the TCC meeting, it was requested that we provide a couple of additional parking pickup stalls in the front of the building, and we've provided those. They are there, as Mr. Patel testified. The curbside pickup is not a high volume use, but it is an important use because of the convenience it provides, not only for people with children in their car, for example, but someone who may not feel well and wants to go pick up their Dunkin' Donuts, or somebody, frankly, who has trouble getting out of the car, particularly in some inclement weather. So when that's the case, these curbside pickup locations, which frankly never existed 2.5 years ago, are far more important today. And I think people got used to them and they realize that it's a good benefit to the site. I would like to answer another question that came up earlier. There was a question about how many trips are anticipated at the drive-through. Just to be clear, the answer is 0. We are not proposing a drive-through. Just to reiterate that and clear that up for the question that was asked. Another element that was added to the plan, and I'll highlight it over here, we show electric vehicle charging stations. Now, electric vehicle charging stations are a relatively new standard that was promulgated by the DCA, where municipalities must provide, as part of site plans, developers must provide electric vehicle charging stations. The way that we have them depicted on here was, frankly, the thoughts we had back in October. I can tell you that the way that it will be executed will be somewhat different than this. As a driver of a fully electric vehicle, I appreciate these and I understand how they work now. What will likely happen, there will be a single post between these 2 parking stalls here with charging receptacles on either side for the electric vehicles. That's the way it'll happen. It'll be on the parking stall side of the sidewalk, so you don't have the cables running across the sidewalk, and that's something that we will clean up when we deal with any final modifications to the plan. But in the last 6 months, we've seen better how those get done as they develop on more and more sites. a comment that was brought up. Yes, there is no trash enclosure on this site. And as that question was being asked, I frantically looked around the site and I realized there was not one. Generally, when we reuse a site, we use the existing trash enclosure, but banks generally don't have trash enclosures because of the security with the materials that they have to dispose of. That was overlooked. There is plenty of room on the site to put a trash enclosure. My guess it's going to be in this corner of the site we can see here on the northeast corner of the site. That allows trash vehicles to come in that are front loading to come in and go this way, or it can allow rear loading vehicles to come in, turn to the left, and then back up into the stall and pick up the dumpster. So that would be a very convenient place to put the trash enclosure. It would properly be enclosed with fencing on 3 sides and a gate on the 4th side. And as I said, there is sufficient parking on the site that 2 additional stalls could be essentially lost to construct that trash enclosure. There is some signage on the site. There's a Dunkin' sign on the site that will be talked about by the architect. There's also a curbside pickup sign over in this area that will direct the traffic around the site. So people who want to do the curbside pickup will circulate around the back of the building and pull into one of those stalls and pick up their orders. I think that's generally an overview of the site. And Dave, do you have any other questions on anything that I might have?
If you would, Paul, please point out the freestanding sign in the front, and where that is and what's happening with that.
Sure. There's an existing freestanding sign that I'm circling here in the lower right corner or southeast corner of the site. That's an existing pylon sign that will be refaced with Dunkin' logos.
And with regard to changes on the site, meaning changes in the throats of the driveways or the curbing around the property, is there any changes that are being made there?
No, that's going to be the same as it was, which is why I skipped over the demolition plan because it's a little boring because it doesn't show too much going on.
Okay. And I believe, so we can point out to the board that there's a note on the plan, I think it's on the first page, that indicates we're going to merge the various lots, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I think there's some notes, it might be on this page, that there is no drive-through window, no speaker or menu board, and no outside tables, correct?
That is correct. Completely consistent with the testimony of Mr. Patel.
I don't have any further questions of Mr. Ferrera.
Okay, board professionals, do you have any questions for Mr. Ferraro?
I have some questions, and it may be more for the operator or the attorney. But since we discussed the need for the dumpster, is the applicant willing to provide landscaping around the proposed dumpster enclosure in order to soften the look of it?
Yes.
And then
that'll be subject to the review and approval of the engineer and/or planner, correct?
I assume so, yes, Mr. Warner.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
And then if this is to be approved, another condition that I would recommend is that pickup of the dumpster occur after 7 a.m. if the applicant's, is the applicant willing to entertain that?
What hours did you say, Mr. Slate?
I would say after 7 a.m.
And before
5 p.m.
I think that's entirely logical. Sites like this have high volumes of traffic early in the morning, and a trash collection in the middle of that does not work very well.
We have no objection to that.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Phillips?
Is Mr. Ferrer, you or should I defer to the traffic engineer about the internal access, or do you want to address that?
I can talk briefly about the internal access, but I know the traffic engineer is going to go into it in more detail.
My specific question is the access in the area where the canopy exists to the area where the island exists on the opposite the store. Is that intended to be one way, or there's a
Absolutely.
one way?
You
I'm
can,
sorry?
you can see, yes, it will be one way. You can see that there is one directional arrow here. It's do not enter signage with striping down here. So it's one way coming around in a counterclockwise direction around the building to the pickup areas.
Okay, and can you indicate where just exactly where the proposed curbside pickup spaces are under or near the canopy?
There's essentially 4 of them that could be used under the canopy here, and then there's 2 more out front.
So it is as many as 4 spaces under the canopy?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess, I don't know if you're the right witness, Mr. Ferrero, but I guess part of my concern is that, there would be the availability, I guess, then of 6 potential spaces, which I think is clearly more than sufficient to serve the dozen or so customers per day. Quite frankly, I think that the 2 designated parking stalls would be adequate to serve the curbside pickup. I understand some logic with the protection from the elements of the canopy, and this is really just for the board to digest. My concern with retaining the canopy and the islands is sort of twofold. One is that it may convey to customers that there is drive-through service when there's not. And secondly, I think it leaves infrastructure in place for a future, drive-through application, which the ordinance clearly prohibits. So that's just something that I would leave for the board to consider as they continue to review this application. Thank you, Mr. Ferrera.
I do have a couple of, if I may, Mr.
Yes, Mr.
Chairman.
Warner.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrero, with respect to the EVC stations, the electric vehicle charging stations, are you saying then you're proposing one dual port station for charging?
That's correct. That's a more effective way to provide the 2 stalls. It'll be 1 post with a cord on either side.
Okay. And is it your understanding that would be compliant with the, well, it's not that new, but it's still relatively new statute?
That's correct.
Okay. And that would comply with the make-ready obligations as well as the potential maximum required stations, in your opinion?
That is correct. They would be made operational from the beginning.
Get-go? Okay. And we got the screening on the and landscaping on the trash enclosure, so never mind there. And I guess the beyond the testimony that you just gave with respect to the one-way direction on the curbside pickup areas under the canopy, would I be correct that any other on-site circulation or ingress egress would be handled by the traffic engineer?
That's correct.
Okay. I believe that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Jar, you have any questions that may be better suited for Mr. Ferrero than for later?
Yeah, excuse me. I do have one question, and I'm thinking that it is better for Mr. Ferrero, maybe 2 questions to answer. Could you explain to me how the curbside pickup would work under that canopy area? I have some concerns about, sight distance and visibility and how, can you explain to me how that operates?
Sure. What happens is the employee leaves the building and walks over underneath the canopy and gives the the customer their order. It's nicer to have it under the canopy because if you have a day where it's raining heavily, the individual can roll the window down without the water going in. I don't think anything particularly difficult or complex about it.
Are you
Mr.
gonna
Ferrer,
offer
could
the
you
building
show
maybe
with
put
the
a door?
cursor the pathway for the employee?
The employees will either come out the front door and go this way, or there's a rear door and they come around this way to get to the curbside pickup areas.
I see. I have some concerns about the safety of the person who's delivering these beverages to folks. And, again, the expectations, the site definitely looks more like a bank than a, and I guess maybe because I can't see the perspective, maybe you guys have some renderings or something.
When you see the architectural plans, it's going to look a lot more like a Dunkin' than it will a bank. And most Dunkin' customers, and Mr. Patel can talk about this, there's a lot of repeat customers. The people will learn very quickly, particularly after the first time here, there is no drive-through. If they pull around there, the only signs say curbside pickup. They would have to continue through and loop and park and go in and place their order. I'm not quite sure where the difficulty or the dangers are. This is a fairly tight site and vehicles are probably driving, 5 miles an hour, particularly underneath that drive-through area where there are very narrow lanes. You just can't drive very quickly. So as an engineer, I really don't see much of a hazard for people walking in the parking lot, any different than it is from any other parking lot.
Okay. I assume that we could request it, maybe add a few more of those pavement marking arrows and if
Sure.
maybe a little bit more signage.
Yeah,
I think the front with the do not enter is good, but the back, maybe you can put a little bit more, make that a little more robust back there.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem. We have a do not enter sign over here, so vehicles can't go around the back of the site coming in from Langdon Lane. And so this is one-way circulation going out here. And we've got a one-way circulation sign here. But, if there's additional signage that you feel is appropriate, we can add that.
And pavement markings.
Pavement markings, yes, that's not a problem.
Certainly. Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
I apologize. Could I ask one more follow-up?
Certainly. Go ahead, Mr. Warner.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrero, so if I understand correctly, with respect to the 4 under the canopy curbside pickup parking spaces, the fourth one from the building, the northernmost curbside pickup space,
Yes.
if an employee was servicing that, a customer, a patron in that space, they would be crossing the other 3 curbside pickup spaces. And then when they were returning to the building, they'd be crossing the other 3 curbside pickup spaces once again, correct?
That's true if you're assuming that 33% of the pickups, the anticipated curbside pickup people are there at the same time, and all 4 lanes would be used.
Right. Well, you have 4 lanes, right?
Yeah, you do. You do. I just think
so all 4 might be used at the same time, correct?
that is certainly possible.
Okay. And is there a designated pathway, markings, a crosswalk, signage, anything protecting that employee?
No, we could put that on there. I think we could put it on there as paint. I don't think it's particularly necessary. Everybody who's coming through there is stopping to pick up an order so they know people walk through there. Again, this is very low speed traffic through here. I think you have a much greater issue if you've got, frankly, a drive-through, because I've seen a lot of drive-throughs at restaurants where people are coming through and people step out of the building and go to parking stalls that might be on the other side of the drive-through area. That's not the case here. This is just solely employees that are very familiar with the operation of the site. They know where the vehicles are, and they know what to anticipate. Obviously, I have no objection to putting in additional striping. I'm just not sure that it would accomplish a whole lot.
For those drive-throughs that you mentioned, when people step out, there's not a man door by the drive-through, and they're not curbside pickup, they're drive-through pickup, and there are crosswalks and there are bollards and there's other things usually that come into play to protect the safety of anybody who might inadvertently walk into those pathways, correct?
They have been added more recently, but I've stepped out of a door or two into a drive-through lane that I got pretty uncomfortable.
Nothing further right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Can I have one more follow-up, Mr. Chairman? It's Mr. Phillips.
Okay, go ahead.
We still have the trend, Mr. Chairman.
The, Mr. Ferrer, can you indicate how the tractor trailer that makes the deliveries once per week, how it accesses the site?
That'll be testimony provided by the traffic engineer. He'll go over all the site circulation.
Okay, great. And where would the unloading take place? Because it was indicated that it's during store hours.
It would be at the rear of the building in this area here. This is 2 lanes of traffic, both heading towards Langdon Avenue. And this is the area where the vehicles will be loading. You have a bypass lane here where people could either pull into the curbside, continue to circulate back out to Madison, or go out to Langdon.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? Okay, do any board members have questions? I see several. I think Mayor Joffe, I think you were first.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Can you clarify, is this the right time to ask about landscaping?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. I didn't hear what the question was.
Is this the right time to ask about questions about the landscaping plan?
Absolutely. We currently are not proposing any additional landscaping on the property.
Okay, I'm looking at the September 8th, 2021 Environmental Commission report with their findings and a recommendation of replacing damaged landscaping.
We have no problem with that.
Okay, and then the other question is, particularly in the area near Langdon Lane, I'm not sure how the buffer is there from the residences on Langdon Lane, but if so, I'm not sure what our professionals feel. If there's additional buffering that needs to be done there, I would certainly encourage it for those neighbors next door, if necessary.
We don't have any objection to working with the board professionals if something needs to be made more robust out there.
That's all I have. Thank you.
We got both stipulated to conditions. Thank you.
Who do we have next? You remember?
Mr. Quinlan's next.
Okay. Mr. Quillen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask about the parking spaces. Are the parking spaces as shown on this plan the same as the ones that exist there now?
Yes.
What is the width of the parking spaces?
I believe they're 9 feet. I don't think we have any dimension on the plan, but if my recollection is correct, they're 9-foot wide stalls.
That's right.
More parking spaces are provided than are necessary, or at least more than are required. And I guess there'll be more testimony about that from the traffic engineer. But I just wonder whether this wouldn't be a good opportunity to, for once, comply with our township ordinance and change the width of these parking spaces to 10 feet. Were you planning, I'll rephrase as a question, were you planning to repaint these parking spaces?
We were, any restriping was intended to do as it was previously approved.
Okay, but you don't know whether there was restriping intended.
Well, there was no restriping intended. It was to keep the stalls as they are now.
You estimate how many parking spaces would be lost in addition to the spaces that would be lost for the trash enclosure?
Yeah, I could estimate that you would probably lose one stall in this area here directly adjacent to the building. You would lose one stall in this bank in the front of the building, and you would lose one stall over here in addition to a stall or 2 stalls associated with a dumpster.
Seems like you'd still have more than sufficient parking, based on, at least based on your testimony.
That would be the case, yes.
I also wanted to know how the applicant would feel about changing the EV charging station so that one of the spaces that could access that charging station is a handicap spot.
That would probably entail moving it down here. I can tell you this as it relates to the EV charging stalls and this site in particular and how they operate. And again, I'm speaking as to somebody who's now has 17,000 miles on his electric vehicle. You go to a place like this, I would never connect my vehicle to an EV charging station in this location. It just isn't practical. If you're there for 5 minutes, it's almost a third of the time you're there to unplug and replug your vehicle. By the time you log into whatever network it is, it's just not going to happen. You could do it in between the accessible stalls, but again, I think the EV charging stations in this case will be seldom used. If they are used, they would be used by probably employees. The EV charging rules do have requirements for when you're supposed to have an accessible stall with an EV charging station. We don't hit that threshold at this point. But again, we can move it. I just don't think it would be the charging station will be used very often.
I do see your point. Okay, thank you. That was it.
Ms. Van Order.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I'm having trouble unmuting. I had a question and related to what I'm hearing board professionals, having some concern around the canopy and around the safety of employees as they bring out curbside deliveries. And I guess I was wondering, if a safer place for curbside deliveries. I appreciate, the nice extra coverage for the people who are not getting out of the car and getting the curbside delivery, but also thinking about some curbside delivery that I've had. I'm in my car, so I'm covered, and the person coming out to deliver it is going to be uncovered in the rain because they're going to have to come out either the front or the back. So it's not that much added convenience to them. Whereas if the curbside delivery was over on the paved part, on the connected to the sidewalk part on the right-hand side, that would provide for more, and this is just a thought, that would provide for more protection of the employee and still the convenience of the curbside pickup for really what the owner is estimating is to be a very few, 12 people a day. It seems like an awful lot of space in this whole configuration to have these 4 aisles for these estimated 12 customers daily getting their curbside pickup. And I wonder also, how would the parking be configured if that canopy were gone and, that space were available for parking, more parking directly to the buildings on the left, similar to what we're seeing on the right, which could then be the curbside picking that would allow for more safety for the employees. I appreciate that the applicant probably wants to keep all the features exactly as they are to save money on the retrofit. I do see the value in that. Just putting those ideas forward for your thoughts. I appreciate that.
I can address that a little bit, particularly as it relates to the parking. These parking stalls to the right-hand side of the building are the prime time parking stalls for the access to this site. They're the closest to the curb, the closest to the building. We are already dedicating 2 to the accessible stalls. We are dedicating 2 to the EV charging stations, which are supposed to be reserved for only electric vehicles. That leaves 2 stalls. If we devote those to curbside pickup, then every customer who walks in the building is going to have to cross at least one drive aisle to get into the building. It's my opinion that it's better to have, if you can have some parking adjacent to the building, the more you have, the better. Moving the EV charging stalls to another location is considerably more expensive. These are not cheap to install. The cabling and the conduit is expensive, and the further it goes, the more expensive it is. So we tried to keep those as close to the building as possible. This happens to be, in my opinion, a very good place where you would have customer pickup. If you change this and you had customer parking here, this is the back end of the building. That's not where they're going to come around this side of the building to get in. So,
I guess the way yeah, excuse me. I guess the way I'm looking at it, and I'd be happy to understand it better. If there were parking spaces coming off in the same orientation, to the building on the left as there are on the right, they're equidistant to that front entrance. Oh, unless I'm missing another entrance. Is there an entrance there as well?
The delivery door is over here where the employees can go out and bring the orders over. If we were try to change this end of the building to look like this end of the building,
right? That's what I was wondering.
Right. It means this whole island and the circulation changes significantly because we need to install a sidewalk, the parking stalls, probably some landscaping. It brings it all the way out over into this area here, and this whole island goes away. We have a light pole on this island, and it makes a significant difference to how the site would operate.
Got it. Just to clarify, though, for my own understanding, those prime time slots for parking, do they? I would agree with you that I don't think many customers are going to plug in, as they run in and out of the Dunkin' Donuts. And maybe there is a way, or maybe there will be a way in the future for that to be fast parking for people. I can't speak to that, and I don't know the ordinance well enough to know what's required. But they're parking in those two slots they have now. There's two handicapped slots. There's two that are dedicated to the EV charging station. So you've got really only two, super convenient in your opinion, or what you've stated, parking spots. Are they going into the building right in front of there, or are they also walking around to this front entrance here?
They're going to walk around over here, and when the architect shows her plans, you'll see exactly how the entrance and pedestrian circulation works. So
they're going to walk around, and and if it were, if traffic circulation were not a problem, and the light post and the moving, I mean, if this were if there were a different priority for the parking, if it felt safer for there to be more parking that was abutting the building, just the regular parking, and then curbside pickup people could just make use of some of those designated spots, then those people on the left wouldn't have any more they would have the same approximate amount of foot travel to go from the left on a little sidewalk and around. And I get it that the applicant doesn't want to take that canopy down and change that island and, create a different configuration. I understand what they're trying to do, but I'm just clarifying for myself that would be an equally convenient place to park on the left as it is on the right, because it would have the same distance to the front of the building, in my view. Would you agree?
Yeah, I don't think there's a significant difference in the distances.
Thank you very much.
Any other board members? I have a couple of questions that kind of related to what Mr. Coolman was asking. One is on the calculation for parking spaces, which is based on the 22 seats in the restaurant. Now we also have this additional space that's kind of the prepackaged food area. I know the traffic study used 2,000 square foot non-drive-through restaurant space standards for that, and 1,669 square feet for whatever the other classification was to calculate trips. Wouldn't something like that be done for parking also?
You could do that, and even if it were 5 per thousand, you're talking less than 9 or 10 spaces on top of the 9 that are already required for the seating would bring us up to 18. And as I said before, there's 28 stalls on the site.
Okay.
So there's plenty of parking.
Which then brings my next question, and this is related to Mr. Quillen's question, is that our ordinance requires 10-foot wide spaces now.
Right.
And yes, the spaces were there, but now this is a new site plan. Are they required to meet? Do those need to be changed, or does it require a variance for the parking space size? That's as much for our professionals as for you, I guess. But
I think at most it would be a design waiver. I will tell you this, if there was a very significant concern on that, I would have no problem restriping this area in the front and losing a stall. We're going to be losing a stall over here, and for the dumpster, and it's probably a stall and a half. So by the time we restripe the stalls, there's going to be no net change from when we install the dumpster. But I would not want to change the width in these, because if we lose a stall here, that means I'm down to 5 stalls,
right,
4 of which are already dedicated for special purposes.
And the handicap spaces are conforming to the handicap requirements, right?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay.
So Mr. Farrow is right, Chairman. If the board has an inclination here to go to slightly wider stalls, we have no objection to that. But I would defer to Mr. Ferrero's expert opinion on what to do with those spaces that are immediately adjacent to the building. And if it means that we're asking for some design waiver on those spaces immediately adjacent to the building, then we'll ask for that design waiver.
Well, so then I guess my question would be maybe to Mr. Phillips. Do they need a design waiver in this case, for Mr. Warner, for this kind of a site plan application?
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that the 10-foot wide spaces requirement is in the zoning ordinance, not the land development ordinance. So I think technically it would be variance relief, but I'll defer to Mr. Warner on that issue, and that the spaces are existing, and then the applicant's not proposing a change, but that may not trump the issue of the variance since this is a new application, but I'll defer to Mr. Warner on that.
Yeah, no, well, thank you, Mr. Phillips. Number one, certainly, if the relief is required, it's a variance, because any deviation from a zoning ordinance provision is by definition a variance as opposed to a site plan exception or design waiver. The predicate question, is this a pre-existing situation that does not require relief, or is it not a pre-existing situation? And since it is a new site plan application and new proposed, albeit permitted use, et cetera, I would opine that indeed the relief would be required, and the relief would be, as mentioned, a variance, not a design waiver, site plan exception. And I think what we're hearing from the applicant is they're only going to ask for that variance relief with respect to the parking area immediately adjacent to the building. Is that correct, Mr.
Correct.
Brady? Okay.
That's correct, Mr. Warner. And frankly, again, since we're coming back on another night, we'll even look at that. And I would like to keep this application as an application that has no variance relief if possible. So unless the board indicates they really want us to ask for that variance to keep those spaces near the building the same, my inclination is to explore with Mr. Ferrero whether we can meet the 10-foot width everywhere and not have any variances.
Okay, Mr. Quillen has another question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just following up on the ideas that we've been exploring for the last few minutes. I agree with Mr. Ferrero about the EV charging stations unlikely to be used by customers who are coming and going in the span of just 5 or 10 minutes. So that's an interesting point, and it makes me think that if the EV charging stations are going to be used by employees, it would be more logical to put them remote from the building. I know that involves extra expense for the applicant, but I would suggest that the applicant may want to consider doing that, and then changing the, which I guess Mr. Brady was indicating he already may be wanting to consider changing the parking spaces even next to the building, the non-handicap parking spaces to 10 feet, which would lose one parking space there, but there wouldn't be EV charging station spots. So it's kind of a gain of one, actually. So I don't think I managed to phrase that as a question, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make a further point about the EV charging stations. It's my humble opinion that the DCA came up with a rule that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in its practical application. That being said, we're doing what we need to do to comply with it. I can tell you that installing the EV charging stations over here on the right side is problematic. You can see a dashed area here where we have an underground stormwater management system. I don't want to be running the cables or conduits across that. Otherwise, they would have to be up here right along Madison Avenue. I don't think that's an appropriate place to put those posts. I think you would have in those cases is people coming in during non-business hours because they see a charging station right along Madison Avenue, and they're going to come in and they're going to park and they're going to get their car charged. So I think the location where they are is the best that they will be. Frankly, I think it's the best location that could be installed.
Mr. Ferrero, I understand your points, and thank you for explaining what that dashed line means, which I hadn't picked up on. So that's useful. That's the stormwater recharge area. In your professional opinion as an engineer, what kind of commercial application is one where customers would be inclined to use EV charging stations because they're going to be on site for long enough to make it worthwhile for them to plug in?
Offices. I can tell you that I have a charging stall at my office that would be very similar to the ones that are installed here. I come in, if I charge for 4 hours a day, I might get 15%, 20% additional charge to what I had. If I'm here all day, then I'll get a full charge. But unless you're at a place for a full period, a long period of time, you're not going to get a charge. The requirement is that these be level 2 chargers, not the level 3 fast chargers. Those are extraordinarily expensive in the tens and $20,000 and $30,000 range to put a single one in. And probably there is not sufficient electrical service to the site to even install those. The ones that would be installed here are 220 volt, 40 amp. So that's something that's not that unusual for a commercial building like this. Where these work best is someplace where you're going to be all day long for a long period of time.
Suppose you're going to be somewhere for an hour. Suppose you're going to a restaurant where you might be seated for an hour, or you're going to a grocery store and you're a slow shopper.
You'll get a decent top off in those. High turnover locations, it really isn't going to provide that much benefit to the public.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize to everyone for taking the time. It's a little bit off topic, but thanks very much.
But I would note that I think you're right. In a location like this is most valuable for employees.
Absolutely.
So employees of Dunkin' Donuts are, many of them I'm sure live in apartments and don't have the luxury of the garage charger like I do for my car. So charging at work does make it possible for them to have an EV. You're right. The customers are probably not going to use them, but they could be a good opportunity for employees. So, okay. Any other? I think that's it for board members. Can we move on to any questions by the public for this witness? I see Mr. Crawford.
Hi, yes, this is, can you my name again?
Yeah, the procedure unfortunately is we need name and address every time.
Okay. Not a problem. I'm kind of new to this, sorry. So this is Lee and Jean Crawford. We're at 5 Langdon Lane.
Thank you.
So just quick comment. I appreciate the consideration for the sanitation from my previous question. My question is more related if there's any thoughts or considerations towards the lighting in the parking lot. I did learn last time that I was listening to this meeting about this topic that got delayed. A dark sky compliant lighting, is that anything that's been considered or talked about? Because it is kind of bright in my backyard with the current lighting in the parking lot.
All right. The lighting in the parking lot is the acorn type lights that you see along the main roads in Morristown. They're glass globes. They have sources that are almost completely visible from 360 degrees around them. They're extraordinarily glare producing. And as a site designer, I can't stand them. Those are the lights that are there. They do provide a nice streetscape. They are the kind of lights that look better during the day than they do at night. One suggestion that I have when I looked at this was potentially taking these two fixtures along the rear property line here closest to the residence and swapping those out to be more of the shoebox type cutoff that are the dark sky compliant fixtures, so we don't have that light that you can see. Generally speaking, the problem is not so much the spillover of light because there's landscaping and fencing there that blocks the light levels. It's the source of the light, the glare that is so obtrusive. And if we had those shoebox type fixtures, that would knock that down substantially.
See, that would be appreciated. And right now, the landscaping does not block any of the lights.
I'm sure that you can see the source through any landscaping because of the way those fixtures are.
If I may, Mr. Crawford, Mr. Ferrero, am I to interpret that as a stipulated to condition of approval? Should there be an approval on the board so desire that stipulation?
Yes, and again, just to be clear, it's the two lights in this area along the rear property line opposite Madison Avenue. I would not change the one light that's by Langdon Lane coming in because that goes with the streetscape lighting that surrounds the rest of the property, which is consistent all the way up into Morristown.
Understood. I have the stipulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I see Mr. Goldberg's got his hand raised again.
Mr. Goldberg.
B. Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road. Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, great, thank you. Question on the topic of the lighting that we were just discussing. On the two islands on the right-hand side and left-hand side by the proposed customer pickup, and then the other island on the right-hand side, are there 3 fixtures located on those 2 islands?
That is correct. There's one here and 2 more over here.
And
I'm sorry,
those,
these 2 and one over here.
and are those of the shoebox type design that you're referring to, or are those?
No, those are the existing acorns, and again are part of this the overall visual streetscape. I'm sorry, this one over here is not a light fixture. It's a tree of some sort.
Tree.
These 3 are landscaping symbols. The ones that look like the sun, those are the site lights. So there's one here along the front of the site, and then there's 2 on this larger island over here.
The 2 on the larger island are of the acorn size that would be similar to those along the streetscape.
Yeah, that's what's there today.
So if there was an effort to implement this as designed and you wanted to dampen or tampen down glare or reduce light pollution, would it be reasonable to assume that if you were to install the shoebox type style lights on that island on the right, that would help mitigate any extra additional lighting? And would that be something that the applicant would be willing to stipulate or agree to?
There comes a point of balancing the look during the day with the look at night. It's my opinion, and I've actually written some municipal ordinances this way, that generally these areas that I'm circling now would have the more decorative fixtures. This one in the back, which is close to the residential and really a circulation area, would have the shoebox type fixtures. Along the front and in the entrance, you're kind of bringing this whole lighting scheme together. So I certainly would not have different ones on this side of the island. You change these two, then you change this one, and then does it bring it to this one? And I think you have to find a logical break point. In my opinion, it's the two at the rear that are the logical break point in that regard.
I see. And is there a separate, or is there a need to be, or I don't know if it's common in these applications to have a separate lighting plan or lighting design plan with the application?
We have not done one because we've been using the existing lighting and haven't changed it. But if we're going to change those two fixtures on the back, we will have to do a lighting plan.
Okay, yeah. I mean, again, just in general, as the overall project proceeds, anything that can be done to reduce lighting, I think would be appreciated by both, mainly by residents. So thank you very much for addressing that. And then my next question also involves lighting, but I'm not sure if, did you indicate that there will be an architect providing testimony tonight? Is that accurate?
Yes.
So my question on the signage, are any of the signs proposed to be backlit or lighting sign? Or would that be a better question for the architect?
Probably better for the architect.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question for you is on the topic of sort of just from an engineering design. I see in front of the Dunkin' sign, which is the main entrance to the establishment, there's a left arrow and a right arrow going there, indicating, I guess that's two-way traffic there. So is the design of this, as people are in those stalls in front of the direct front door near Madison Ave, as they're, getting in their cars and going to leave, they would have a choice of either exiting onto Madison Ave or going back out through the exit to Langdon. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And as people work in the curbside pickup slots, as they're coming down to exit the building, they could actually, is there anything to preclude them from an engineering perspective from making, I guess that would be a left to go out towards Langdon as they're exiting, or are they required to exit onto Madison Ave?
Generally speaking, the vehicles that would come here in order to go to Langdon, they almost have to make a 180 and come out to Langdon. I can tell you that the access from Madison Avenue is right turnout only. The people who would be going out to Langdon are most likely the ones who may make a left turn onto Madison Avenue. If you're going to make a right, you're almost certainly going to be coming out of the driveway here. It's less of a loop. It's less of a convoluted trip to come out this main driveway than it would be to Langdon Avenue, Langdon Lane.
Thank you. And in sort of your engineering opinion, or just the holistic view of this area here by the front door and where it meets up with the curbside pickup traffic coming out, do you see there's a lot going on right there. So there's a lot of different movements that can be happen or not happen. I guess that would be better for the traffic expert for me to follow up on.
I can tell you that it may seem like there's a lot going on, but frankly, there isn't. This is a parking lot, and there's cars pulling out of every parking lot in every place. One thing we don't have here that kind of helps reduce some of the conflicts is we don't have double loaded parking. There are not parking stalls on both sides of the drive aisles, so you don't have people potentially backing into each other. That reduces a whole conflict that you often see in other parking lots. So while there are a number of things going on here, I'm not concerned at all as to how the parking works and the safety of it.
Okay, thank you. And then for the EV charging stations, is there signage required for wherever they may reside? Is there required signage to go along with them as well?
Yes.
I guess that would need to be, we
have to detail that. As I said, these plans were prepared 6 months ago, and some of those regulations are becoming more and more concrete now. We know exactly what needs to be done. There needs to be pavement marking, just like accessible stalls. There needs to be signs for the EV charging stations themselves.
Okay, and just to follow up on your point about the location of the EV charging stations, for my, this isn't really a question, it's just a comment. The EV charging station
comments for the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, is that it for?
See no further hands raised by
Okay.
members of the public.
And we can move on to our next witness. I would like to point out that it's now what, 10 after 9, and we have a stop at 10. Unless we, so we would like to, I don't know how long our architect and questions.
And we give it a go.
I think
Chair.
we'll give it a go, because we know we're gonna have to carry this anyways to the traffic, so, but we'll try to get as much through this as we, so hopefully we can get through it all. So if you could call your next witness.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next witness is Cynthia Falls. Cynthia, could you, to get started, spell your name and provide us with an address?
And come off of mute first.
Not showing that she's muted.
Oh.
She had indicated to me by text about an hour ago that she had lost audio for some reason.
I see that she's in by phone. Do you know her phone number offhand?
Just a second. She called me today. Let me find it.
I see there's a 646.
Looks like 646-325-9924.
All right, I'm going to open that up. I see that as an attendee. So if she unmutes on that line, she can talk to us through that phone. So I'm showing that your phone is muted. I don't know what the command is, but if you can unmute that, we should be able to hear your audio.
Right. Don't seem to be making any progress here.
I'll text her and see what is going on.
I think it's *6 to unmute, if they haven't tried that.
She just texted me back indicating I am unmuted.
I would try that *6 on your phone, though, if that may unmute that. All right, I'm showing you're unmuted now.
Cynthia, are you there?
Your phone definitely unmuted because you're not shown as muted on this end, right?
I just texted her, Mr. Chairman, to see if she can hear us. And I'm waiting for a response.
Okay.
Mr. Warner, I have a question for you. If Ms. Falls is only, she indicates I can hear you on phone only. I'm asking if she has video.
She may want to try and just log out and log in again. Sometimes that corrects an audio issue.
Okay, I'll suggest that.
As a panelist.
Okay, I just texted her that suggestion, Mr. Slate.
You had a question for Mr. Warner?
Well, yeah, my question is this. I believe that the amendment to the Open Public Meetings Act that allows virtual or electronic meetings requires that persons who are going to give testimony actually be available by video, not just audio.
You're correct.
So if we can't get Ms. Falls on video in addition to audio, then I guess we can't proceed. What's going on here? Mr. Slate, Ms. Falls indicated she's showing up as Rosemary Chavez. I don't know, I'm looking through the participants to see if
Twice.
that video is there.
I do see her logged in. She just dropped out again. She does have one login, but there's no audio or video indicated.
I hear you now.
There we go.
Yep. Let me just hang up. Okay. All right. You got me?
We got you.
Yeah, we got you.
All right, good.
Audio and video for the record.
I know, it was weird. Never, just in the middle of the last testimony, I lost everything. The all sound, and the real Rosemary did as well. So.
All right.
Okay,
So, name and address for the record, please.
Can you say again, please?
Name and address for the record, please.
Okay, Cynthia Falls, FALLS, 36 Ames Avenue, Rutherford, New Jersey.
Okay, Ms. Falls, could you lay out for the benefit of the board your educational and professional background?
Yes, I have Master of Architecture degree from University of Texas. And I've been registered as an architect in New Jersey since 2008.
And is your license in New Jersey still in effect?
Yes.
Have you been accepted as an expert to testify about architecture before other boards of the state?
Yes, I have. I've testified in Morristown, Marlborough, and some of the other surrounding communities from Morris Township.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that Ms. Falls be accepted as an expert in the field of architecture.
Yes, I will accept it.
Thank you.
Please go ahead, Ms. Falls.
Okay.
Ms. Falls, I first wanted to ask you in terms of preparing, you prepared, or your office prepared plans in connection with this application. Are you familiar with the site that's there now and the building that's there now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And in terms of the building, we're going to go through each of the pages, and you can share your screen and explain them page by page. But just in terms of a summary, what is the proposal from an architectural point of view for the site?
The proposal is to take this bank and reconfigure it into a Dunkin' and a store selling other food and beverages.
Right. Are you going to expand the footprint at all?
No, we will work within the existing footprint, and the building will remain largely the same. As Mr. Patel says, the building is over 3,700 square feet. which is quite large for a Dunkin' Donuts. The average is around 1,800 square feet for a typical Dunkin'.
Okay. Let's just start to go through your drawings then, and I see you have A 1.01. If you could explain to the board what this is, and then starting wherever you would like, maybe at the front door, just go around the floor plan and explain the various constituent parts.
Right. People will enter the Dunkin' and the store through the proposed vestibule, which is located here. And they will enter into the store. The Dunkin' will be set up. I'm sure most people are familiar with a Dunkin' where they approach the order taker, and there is a front line and back line service counter. People will enter in and talk to the order taker, which is right next to the bakery case shown on the plan. That's the lines here. And then they will proceed down the line to pick up their beverages closer to this end of the store. The seating, the store will have a total of 22 seats. It'll be a mixture of different types of seating, soft seating, hard seating, and a community table. In the back, there'll be a service area and a storage area. There, as was initially said, there will be no cooking on the site. It's just reheating of frozen product. The dark area that was next to the canopy right here had the existing drive-up window, which we are closing off. The solid area indicates parts of the building that will be filled in and closed off. There'll be 2 accessible restrooms in the plan, and they will be open to the public. The store also has a sandwich station, which again, Mr. Patel indicated that we will be reheating, again, frozen product only. Both ovens are essentially glorified convection ovens. There will be a hood over the sandwich station, and that is not because we have greasy product. It's more that the toaster is so hot that we have to dissipate the heat. So there will be no, even though the hood will go up to an exhaust fan on the roof, there'll be no grease-laden vapors or any type of smell coming through that. That is essentially it as we go through the front of the store. There is a little storage area again too for the C-store, and there's a mechanical room which houses all the electrical and the air conditioning.
Okay. Why don't we go on then to your next page, A 2.0.
Yes. A 2.0 has the existing elevations and has a combination of the existing elevations and what is proposed. The existing building configuration will remain as is, except for the addition of that we are putting in new windows. And that is simply because the type of windows that were in there will probably get fogged up. They weren't the right type for this type of usage, where there's more heat on the inside. On the exterior, over the front entry, there'll be a Dunkin' sign. It's orange with a pink apostrophe. It's an internally illuminated sign that is approximately 22.3 square feet. It is well under what is allowed on the site. Then the other elevations will remain basically as is, with the exception of some paint colors, which is that the metal roof will be painted and there will be an orange band. I'll bring that up in our rendering of the site. Also on the site, we have some signage. There's the detail for the Dunkin' sign, so you can see it a little better. There's a freestanding sign that is existing, and we will be refacing it and painting the pole.
And I think on A 2.0, you had a chart for signage. All of those signs are compliant with the Morris Township ordinance and do not require any variances, correct?
That's correct.
Other than putting in the new front door and the insulated glass, the storefront framing system, I think is what it's called. Is there anything else being changed on the building other than just painting?
No, just the new signage. The building will remain exactly as it is right now. I can bring up a rendering of what the existing what the building will look like.
Mr. Warner, this rendering was submitted to the board. I don't know if it was not in the set of plans, but it was one of the submissions that went to the board with 16 copies for everyone. Is it required that we mark this as a exhibit or not?
Required, no, but I'm going to ask that you do so voluntarily anyway, only because it wasn't a part of the site plan or architecture set. But yes, I did get a copy. Probably everyone did. Before we do that, though, if I can ask just for confirmation that the architecturals A1.0 and A2.0 that were referred to by Ms. Falls, what's the last revised date, just so we can confirm that's what we had?
That is on 10, late at night. That is 10/27/21.
Perfect, thank you. So let's call, well, I think we're up to A2, Exhibit A2, aren't we? Sonia?
Yes, we are. And actually, I believe Ms. Falls has 2 pages to this. So if we could, since we're both renderings, can we have an A2 that consists of 2 pages?
Absolutely, the old compendium, we're good.
Okay. Then if you would, for A2, Ms. Falls, describe what that is and what it shows.
This is a rendering of the overall site with the signage. You can see that we have the Dunkin' sign over the front entry, and we just painted an orange band down below that, which is an architectural element there.
Does this show also the new storefront windows?
Yes, it does. And we are painting the roof as well.
But other than that, there's no changes to the brick or to the facade or to any of the colors or designs there.
That is correct. And the color, it's sometimes hard to tell from the computer. It is a dark gray. Off in the distance, you can see the existing freestanding pylon sign that will be, the pole will be painted the same gray, and it will be, the sign will be refaced to indicate Dunkin'.
Now, I'd indicated to Mr. Warner that there was a second page. There you go.
Yeah, this is the second page with a little bit better view of the front of the building. Also, you can see the light posts, the acorn light posts that the engineer was referring to.
Okay. Why don't we go to A 3.0 then, Ms. Falls, if you can, that talks about the back of the building, just so that the board has a view all the way around.
Yeah, the back of the building, we'll have an existing delivery door, and there is a wall pack above the door that is for some security in the back. These are the shielded light fixtures, so they will point down and be dark sky compliant. And that delivery door exists today. Then the other side of the building, on the southeast elevation, this is the side with the store in front of the handicapped spaces, and there's no change other than painting. And again, everything.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I have any further questions of Ms. Falls.
Okay. Then we move on to our board professionals. Any of the professionals have questions for Ms. Falls?
I have no questions.
I just, Ms. Falls, the freestanding sign will be internally lit,
That's correct.
as was the prior TD Bank sign, as I recall.
That's correct.
And what kind of lighting on the Dunkin' signing? Can you just explain that on the facade?
On the front facade, the Dunkin' sign is internally illuminated. It's like vinyl plastic letters that there's LED lights on the inside. So it's a diffuse LED light for the Dunkin' sign.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Warner?
I guess just one, if I may, Mr. Chairman, thank
Yes.
you. The Exhibit A2, the two-page rendering, page 1. I just wanted to confirm that the rendering does not show any of the islands under the canopy, but those islands exist and are proposed to continue to exist if there's an approval, correct?
That's correct.
That is correct, Mr. Warner.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Jar?
I have no questions for this witness. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Assuming no more questions from the professionals, do we have any questions from the board members?
Mr. Quinlan apparently has a question.
Nope. Okay, Mr. Quillen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question about the degree to which there will be any kind of baking inside the store, because my recollection is that Mr. Patel testified that although there would be no donuts prepared inside the store, they would be delivered from another location, that there would be other items that would be prepared there. I'm looking for my notes. Muffins, croissants, and bagels. I think he said they would all be made on location. Not sure what he meant by made. I think that was the word he used.
Yes, the way I understand it is all reheating of frozen product.
You know what, Mr. Quillen, I assume Mr. Patel is still on the Zoom call. If maybe we could ask him that directly, Mr. Patel, if you're still on the call, maybe you can answer that.
Yeah, sure. I'm still here. So all these items come frozen, and the muffins, the bagels, and the croissants are all baked in our oven, freezer chew oven.
They're frozen, but they haven't been baked. They're raw and they need to be baked.
Correct.
I see. So that would produce some sort of fumes, perhaps not an enormous amount, but it would produce some cooking aromas.
Possibly, yeah, sure.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. I don't think I had anything further. Thank you.
See no further hands raised by board members.
Okay, and I guess we can move on. Are there any questions from the public for this witness? And again, I question, save comments for later in the proceedings, but right now these would be questions for the architect, Ms. Fells. Is there anyone?
Mr. Goldberg has a question.
Oh, Mr. Goldberg?
Yes, hi, Lee Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road. My question is, first question is regarding, I think you had mentioned because of the installation of the hood involved with baking, there would be some fan on the roof to remediate, I guess, any exhaust smoke, anything along those lines. Is that something that runs continuously all day? Does it cycle on and off throughout the day, or is it just a continuously running fan on the roof?
It's usually interlocked with the operation of the oven. I believe in this store, you actually have an electric oven, convection oven that does not require a hood, but some franchisees choose to use it, but they do not bake every minute of the day. The sandwich station probably operates at different times of the day. It has its busy times, its non-busy times. Again, Mr. Patel could probably speak more towards, how often that would be run, but I would assume that as customers trickle in and out throughout the day, it would be, at least the one on the sandwich station would be on.
Okay, thank you.
It's not though, these are not very high exhaust. These are not like high powered exhaust fans that you would associate with the giant roar of the type where there's a situation where there's frying going on.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And I just want to clarify, I think you had said on the plans with the drive-through window that currently exists for the existing bank, that it was indicated in a gray color that was being filled in. On your rendering, I think in A2, it looks like to me it's being filled in with additional windows. Can you just speak to if that's going to be a wall or windows there? Or?
I'm looking at, I have up on the screen right now, drawing A2.0.
Okay.
There are some windows that are on the right-hand side of that elevation.
Thank you.
Exist as windows, but this dotted line that is indicated right here is where the window approximately was and where that's going to be filled.
Thank you. And on this drawing here, it looks like underneath even those three windows, and then also the windows that line up along Madison Avenue, that there is some, whether it's 1 foot or 2 foot of brickwork underneath those windows. I believe on A2, the rendering, the sort of computer generated imagery, it looks like that it's just floor to ceiling windows with no brick.
It is floor to ceiling windows. That's not brick on the bottom half of those windows. That is, it's just the hatching material makes it look like that. That's a little bit deceiving.
Yes.
But no, it will be a storefront from top to bottom.
So could you go back to your A2? If we could get maybe the second page.
Mm-hmm. This is
the second. I mean, sorry, the first page. I thought there was another view we saw with more of a street view from Madison Ave. So that is not.
I think Ms. Falls, he means A2, the exhibit A2, and it was the close-up rendering.
Yes, that one. So that is all window. There's no brick underneath there, and that frosted area, I guess, is the hatching that you're referring to.
Yes, that's correct.
Is that actually window, Ms. Falls, on the very bottom? Or
yes,
is that
it's
metal
all
or some other.
It's all window.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And then I had some questions about the signage that I was going to ask earlier to Mr. Ferraro, but I think it was indicated better for perhaps yourself. Having seen close to over the last 20 years, maybe, I don't know, close to 200 different applications here in town, I'm really taken aback by just the number of signs that are referred to on the design plan we saw earlier. I think that I counted a total of 15 signs, and it's hard to tell which ones are just reflective signs indicating places for people to go, which are backlit. So are there, can you just speak to any lit signs on this property other than the stand sign?
There's the lit signs are the sign on the front of the building, the sign, the freestanding sign over here that currently exists today. And then all the rest of the signs are just the lighted signs around the parking lot.
So how many lit signs will there be in the parking lot?
Well, these lit signs are the acorn signs are currently, they're the signs that are currently existing. One building sign that's lit. We have the freestanding sign that's
Sure.
lit. And sorry, I'm just referring, I just want to refer to, and what's not showing up is that there are some directional signs at the entry and the exit. They're shown on, I'll bring up the detail.
I think they're A4.0, Ms. Foss.
Yeah,
Maybe you wanna go to
A4.0,
that
we will
exhibit.
have two directional signs at the both street entry and exits. And those are internally lit. They're signs about 4 feet high. They're very small square footage. They're 2.75 square foot each.
And so other signs indicating like curbside pickup, all the other, again, on the site plan we saw earlier, I counted about 15 signs. The curbside pickup signs, all those signs are just reflective, regular sort of, signs where no lighting involved, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. And then I don't know if our professionals or engineers, like, is there for our, we must have, or we don't want to assume, but we have a sign ordinance, a signage ordinance in town. Is there any sense on the signage that's being proposed here? How close, if they added 2 more signs, they may be seeking a variance, how close this comes to the amount of signage that's proposed versus what's allowed?
We have.
Well, what we
all the-
proposed is compliant, according to Ms. Falls' testimony and the signage sheet or the signage chart that's on sheet A 2.0.
Okay, yeah. The reason I'm asking is because oftentimes with these type of establishments, you'll see, those are large front windows there. The corporate can send, 99-cent coffee. All of a sudden you have decals and stickers appearing in the windows that can present as signage. I've seen, 10-foot flagpoles waving, coffee, $1.99, donuts that could be planted perhaps in the front of the building to attract, customers naturally. So just if you accumulate all this type of signage, that's where I guess you would sort of maybe potentially be looking at a variance, but I'm just curious if there was any intent to use any additional signage that's not reflected here, or trying to control for what that sort of looks like at the streetscape view. From next thing you know, you could have that whole bank of windows as a giant sign in and of itself. Any intent to use it that way?
No, there's no intention that I know of, Mr. Goldberg. Every municipality regulates temporary signs or window signs slightly differently. All I can, and I represent several boards, and I know that's frequently an issue, when a promotion from Miller Lite comes along and all of a sudden the liquor store has a giant sign in the window.
Right.
But we'll certainly comply with whatever ordinances the township has regarding temporary signage, like the banner signs you're talking about, or the 2-for-1 sale sign in the window.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Is that it? I don't see anyone else.
I see no other hands raised by members of the public.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slade. I guess that concludes what you have for us tonight, right, Mr. Brady?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, and I met the 10 o'clock deadline.
Yes. Well, I'll thank the public and the board and the professionals for that too. They played a role too.
Yes.
Hand raised.
We're gonna carry, I take it, Mr. Chairman. Oh, wait, we have another hand.
We have another hand.
Nope, went up.
Patricia Collins.
Patricia Collins, I see you have your hand raised.
Okay.
Yes,
There you go.
thank you. I'm
Again,
actually on-
name and address again, please.
Oh, sorry, Patricia Collins, 4 Green Knolls Road, Morris Township. I wanted to make a comment. Is this appropriate this time? I thought you were
No.
finished with the questioning of the,
No, the time for public comment is after all the testimony has been done and we go to deliberations, and then the public can make their comments on their thoughts on the application, the general comments also.
If
will I
may,
have
Mr.
an
Chairman,
opportunity tonight?
well, Ms. Collins, I think we're going to be carrying the matter to another evening because the application presentation is not complete yet. We have a traffic engineer, I understand, that's going to be coming on behalf of the applicant. And perhaps one or more additional witnesses or some of the same witnesses may be coming back, I don't know. So I would imagine the board is hopeful that you'll be able to make the next meeting date, which presumably would be the last hearing date on this application, at which point you and all members of the public could make comment after the applicant has completed their presentation, if possible.
Yes.
Certainly that's the goal.
Will that be 2 weeks from tonight? Will that be 2 weeks?
We're about to find that out.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe. Mr. Brady, if I may, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
please,
I
please
think you have some further work to do on your end, or at least your traffic engineer does, if I'm not mistaken. I know Sonia has the schedule. She is in charge of that. And I'm certainly, well, I'm not going to mess with that. I'm going to leave that to Sonia, but I'm wondering how much time you might need realistically on your end to be able to present that additional information and have our professionals, including our traffic engineer, go through it and advise the board with any further reports before the next hearing date.
Yeah, that's my concern, and I'm looking right now to see if our traffic engineer is on the meeting. I believe he is. Mr. Chase, you were having conversations with Mr. Fissinger, I think, regarding what additional information needed to be acquired and submitted. How long do you think you would need to get that done? And of course, we have the issue of, perhaps Mr. Jar can talk from the municipal side. How much time is reasonable to let all that be take care of itself?
Sure. Does the municipality need it 10 days prior to the next hearing to be able to produce that second review, or can we work on a truncated time frame?
I think we prefer to have it 10 days in advance.
Okay, and when's the next hearing date? Because if it's 10 days in advance and the next hearing's in 2 weeks, that only leaves me with 4 days to produce the revisions, which obviously isn't realistic,
Yes,
unfortunately.
Sonia, the next meeting is April 4th. The one after that's April 18th, correct?
Yes,
And are either of those, or more to the point, is the April 18 one realistically somewhat available for the balance of this case?
yes.
Yeah, and on my end, I can commit to having everything back to the township by April 8th, so that'll be 10 days prior to the 18th.
That's correct.
That's good for on your end, or Mr. Jar's end.
Mr. Jar, are you good with that schedule?
Yes, that would be perfectly fine. If he can have everything to us by the 8th, we can easily have a report to the board a few days before the meeting.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're hearing that this matter is going to be carried without further notice to our meeting date on April 18 and I believe it will still be at 7 p.m. and I believe it will still be a remote access meeting similar to this evening's meeting.
That is correct.
And I would just ask Mr. Brady, if you'd email us an extension of time to act through the end of the month of April, whether we need it or not, it's always good to have.
That's fine. I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Guess we're done with the hearing. We move on to our other agenda matters.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Just thank
Good
you,
night.
Mr. Bray. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything to report from the legislative committee?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And I understand on the agenda was a request for an extension. That
That's
has been
gonna be
withdrawn,
carried.
right?
That's, yes,
So we don't have to deal with that.
right.
So the only thing left is the Board of Adjustment annual report, which doesn't really have anything for us to consider. It's just there. I think we have to acknowledge its receipt. And everyone got the copy. It was in the material that Ms. Santiago sent out. So I guess we can acknowledge that receipt formally, say that we've gotten it. I believe that satisfies it. And I think, okay, so that deals with our other matters, correct?
Yes.
We do have a time for general public commentary now, correct?
That's good. Unrelated to any matters on the
Unrelated.
agenda, so it's not with respect to, among other things, the Anna management case.
Yes.
But if there are any other items that the members of the public wish to bring to the attention of or inquire of the planning board, we are here.
See no hands.
I see no
raised for,
hands.
members of the
Okay.
public on that.
No reason for a closed session, correct?
None whatsoever.
And no communications for the, I think we haven't had any. So,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, so you want to give us a quick rundown of what's anticipated
yes.
for April 4th and April 18th? And we already have a little bit of a heads up as to something that's coming back on April 18th.
Right, correct. April 4th, I have Morris County Golf Club coming in. And April 18th, I have Joseph Savage. It's a minor subdivision on Starlight Drive. And of course, Anna Management. That's all I have for now.
okay. Thank you. That said, we seem to be through. I will certainly entertain an motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
None?
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
So second?
Tanya Van Order.
Tanya, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
That was me, Tanya.
Yes, yeah, thank you. So all in favor?
Aye.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Well done, Mr.
And
Chairman.
your.
Nice job running the meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Yep.
Okay.
Good night.